Well, good morning, church. It's great to be able to share this morning's devotion with you. And I just want to say thank you again for all those who've been sharing devotions with us. Thank you for Holly's yesterday. It's always a blessing to hear younger people just share from their heart and their experiences. And I know it's a blessing to the church as well. And I just want to say thank you for your encouragement and your support for these devotions, and just for being able to stay in touch this way. I know it's a real blessing to many out there, but also it is to us as we see those words of encouragement. So pray God's blessing upon you today. My daily readings have been very similar to Nigel's. I've started at the beginning of this year and just coming towards the end of the book of Genesis, and I just wanted to share from chapter 45 in Genesis. And it was just a verse that really stood out to me as I was reading it the other day. And really what it speaks about is forgiveness. It talks about what it is to really forgive and let go when you have been wronged, when you've been treated unjustly. And it's some verses from chapter 45, as I've said, and it's the character's Joseph, and it's a wonderful character to study and to look at. And he experienced so much. He was his dad's favorite, got bullied because of that, got beaten up and sold into slavery, as we know, because he shared his dream that his brothers would bow down to him, which they took offence to. So they beat him up and sold him. They were going to leave him for dead, but they decided to sell him off. That in itself would have been bad enough and enough to hold a grudge, I would imagine, for as long as you wanted to. But then to go and be sold into slavery, to become eminent in his master's house, but then to be accused of rape, to be thrown into prison, to interpret dreams, to be forgotten about in prison, and then from, as Nigel shared the other day, from prisoner to prime minister in one day. It's just an amazing story, Joseph's story. But as we come to the end of the book of Genesis, we see that story continuing, and as it continues, bringing about a wonderful restoration and reconciliation. And it really spoke to me about not giving up, not giving in, being persistent in prayer, and continuing to hope that God, who is a God who restores, will do so in his perfect timing. So the verses are from verse 3 in chapter 45, and I'll just read it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph." This is when he revealed himself. He'd actually had not a bit of fun, but he'd over a certain amount of time, he'd sent them away and brought them back, and without revealing who he was. And it comes to this portion. It says, "Then Joseph said to his brothers, 'I am Joseph. Does my father still live?' But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence." I bet they were. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, who you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life." And that's really all I want to say today. Joseph's outlook, I mean, he could have easily, in the position that he was in, he didn't even have to reveal himself. He could have just had the brothers killed. He could have sent them off with no food. He could have done anything he wanted in the position that he had been put in, God had given him. But yet in that, he decides to not only to restore his brothers, to forgive them, but to give them land, to feed them, to love them, to look after them, to seek after their best and their welfare, not seeing that they'd been sold into Egypt and was counting it or holding a grudge, but he saw it that God was the one who was preserving him and his brothers by doing all that he did. Now that takes great faith. You know, we've been talking about faith and works on a Sunday morning. Well, this story is evidence of Joseph's faith preceded by works. He stood through the most intense trials, the most difficult circumstances, and through it he forgave his brothers. He was honoured by God, and because of it he was restored to his family. And ultimately the nation Israel was preserved through Joseph's obedience. It is just, I love the narrative and the story in Genesis, but particularly this, and as it stood out to me, I just thought, wow, as Joseph just didn't hold in his heart, you know, he could have remembered the beating that he took, being thrown into the hole, being sold into slavery, being accused of rape, being thrown into prison, being forgotten in there for years. But he didn't. God sent me beforehand to preserve life. Wow, what an outlook Joseph had. And, you know, my prayer would be that we would have that perspective of Joseph, that no matter how difficult the circumstance may be, no matter what those who are meant to be close to us, our brothers or sisters, have done and the hurt that has caused, that we would see that God has got his hand on us, that he is faithful and will complete what he has begun, and that we are to keep our eyes upon him and to be faithful, to be obedient, and also to be forgiving when we have that opportunity. So I pray that would be an encouragement to you today, and that your day would be a blessed one. God bless.